Welcome back to Junction 119. This is Kellan.
This is Casen.
And, never in my years talking either on this podcast, Casen, or on the radio back in college, back in BGSU, was I ever in the position to where I was talking about the Super Bowl literally the day after it happened? Like the day after the night it happened. It's always been like a few days or a few weeks now. This show is going to go out on Tuesday, so you're probably consuming the Monday content as you and I are speaking today. But for our listeners, they'll get our stuff on Tuesday, and that's what we're going to do today. How you doing, my friend?
Good, good. I
I'm
had a
loving the
pretty
hat.
good weekend. Yeah, thank
You
you,
you
thank
just
you.
mentioned something
Partial.
interesting to me out off the right off air, so I was like, you
Yeah.
should say that. That's pretty cool.
The I'm wearing the Archibald hat, sport my high school. It was I guess I just recently found out that, our alma mater, Bowling Green, their football coach, Scott Leffler, is going to be heading to my high school, I think at some point in April, for some coaching thing for football coaches. Um, and so they'll be fun. Little tie in there for me.
Yeah, shout out Scott Leffler. So that's very cool. Football's on the agenda today. We have a pretty simple lineup. We're gonna essentially decompartmentalize all things regarding Super Bowl 58, the game itself, the spectacle around it, the commercials, the movie trailers. It all has to pertains to do with what you and I talk about every week, man. I want to thank our listeners for their patience because this ended up I'm actually happier that we're doing a Super Bowl reaction show than like a Super Bowl prediction show because I think this is honestly going to be more fun.
Yeah, yeah.
Than and you and I both picked the Chiefs, so we can kind of take that all apart. But we're going to give you all that, and then of course we're going to give you of the weeks to kind of end things, where we're just going to talk about, quite frankly, any news we want, as we usually do.
Yeah.
That does that about cover? Does that about cover everything we
I think
decided,
so. I
Casey?
think so. It's if anybody listening is a 49ers fan, you might want to just not listen to this one. It might be a little painful.
Well, the game itself might be painful, but you might want to be
Yeah.
interested at least to hear what we have to say about your team in general.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and if you're a Chiefs fan, well, I guess congrats on being the new dynasty. But first things first, I think we should talk about the game itself. And as we usually do, as we've talked
Hmm.
about this whole playoffs, we're not just necessarily here to talk about the Super Bowl. You and I, we're more or less just here to put a bow on the whole NFL season, right? Because that's
Hmm.
essentially what the Super Bowl conversation really is at its core, right? So, Kansas City Chiefs defeated the San Francisco 49ers 25-22 in just the second Super Bowl in history to go into overtime, and it took the entire quarter. Quite literally, it took 5 quarters to decide this game. With the final play coming in literally the last like 15 seconds of the first, what was going to be the first overtime
Hmm.
period if necessary.
Now, I before we go on, I do want to point
Sure.
out because I know a lot of people were confused about this, and I did see some people online like being very confused and like referencing conspiracies or whatever. The clock didn't matter because of the new overtime rules. If the time ran out on the Chiefs and they hadn't finished the drive, it would have just kept going into another overtime.
Right. And
So a lot of people were very confused as to why they weren't calling timeouts. Essentially, the clock did not matter.
I
I don't
didn't,
know why there is a clock, but
yeah.
it wasn't relevant.
Well, to be honest with you, I just to kind of mark it for that's actually a good point that you almost can like turn the clock off, like we do in college
Well,
overtime.
from what I understand, if the time runs out and both teams have had their first possession, then like the game's over. If what I understand, if I'm trying to think about how I think it's essentially like I don't really I guess yeah, I don't really know in what situation that would even be relevant because if the clock stops and they both have had a possession, then it would just go to another overtime anyway.
Or right,
So I
exactly.
don't really
So,
understand I don't really get the point of the clock
like,
involved.
let's just get this out of the way. NFL overtime is awful. It's
Yeah.
terrible. College overtime is the best overtime that there is. And no, they will never put college overtime into the NFL because NFL games would take too long, and the networks, along with player safety, would never go for that. With college, you can do that. And even with college, they make you just do 2 point conversion shootouts now. So, I mean,
Well, I
I
mean it's as close as we're gonna get with both teams getting a chance.
Yeah, quote, as fair a chance as we can.
Yeah.
Now, what would have been interesting is if say the Niners had been able to make that something like, you know what, let's break down the game before we talk about the actual end of it.
Yeah, let's go back to the beginning. We'll start at
Yeah,
the
we'll
beginning.
start kind of at the beginning of the game. Talk about the first half itself. It really, really, really looked like it. You let's just get this out of the way. You and I both picked the Chiefs, and if I was sitting here a week ago, I would have sat here and said, I thought this game was going to be the Chiefs by a pretty decent amount. Like I didn't really like. I just had this feeling that this is going to be one. They were going to win this game, similar to how they had won the Buffalo and Baltimore games. In that, from the jump, it's going to be clear who the best team is, and they're going to just slowly pull away starting in the third quarter. I was essentially kind of right about that. They didn't really pull, they never pulled away, but they started to make their adjustments. But first half was really all San Francisco. It was a really defensive game, and it was a genuinely fun game to watch, even though it was defensive. I had people texting me saying this has been kind of an awful game so far. I'm like, I'm kind of enjoying watching literally the unstoppable Chiefs offense be stopped, and they look great doing it. San Francisco, that is.
I mean there were portions of the game that were interesting, but then there were some other portions that weren't. I mean it generally felt like I turned to somebody when we were watching the game with, and I was like, this feels a lot like the Rams Patriots Super Bowl that ended like 13-3, but it was a lot more entertaining than that. Like it felt like it was going to be a little bit better than that, but like when it was, essentially like when it was like 3-0 or whatever, it felt like it was like this is just not ever
Yeah,
gonna.
I wouldn't even agree with that it's necessarily that it was that dragging. I mean, if you recall that Super Bowl you just mentioned was like 3-0 at halftime.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't quite that. At least we got a first half touchdown, and it looked like some semblance of offense was going to be possible. I almost I almost kind of could see if it was like 0-0 at halftime, because for a while there I thought that might be what we were headed towards.
Hmm.
Um but no, that didn't happen. And then I could have seen maybe San Francisco finds a way to just drag it out, and the final score actually is like 10-3 or something. But no, that's not what happened. We did get some flashes of brilliance, but it's worth noting, because we were kind of joking about it before we started recording, Casen, that the Chiefs were looking rattled. They were looking frustrated. They were looking like Baltimore looked against them in the first half.
Yeah, I mean, you had a lot of things kind of going back and forth momentum wise, and it definitely felt a lot like some other games we've seen where every time something happens, um, in the Chiefs' direction, they have some other mistake that swings it right back to the opponent,
Right.
and so you saw a lot of frustrations. I mean, there was the famous or the very viral clip of Travis Kelce, you know, trying to assault Andy Reid, and then well, it's just tensions running high as they always do on
Terrible look, by the way.
in the Chiefs.
No
Yeah,
matter what way you slice it, it's only not going to be remembered because they won the game. Still a terrible look to do that to Andy Reid. Needs to be said.
yeah. I mean, and
Horrendous.
it's definitely not the first time that he's done something like that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, because you had the early CMC fumble that could have mattered, but they ended up not doing anything with it. And then shortly after that, they end up having Pacheco fumble, with them in scoring distance. And so I think that was like at the 10-yard line or something. It was like they were about to score.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a lot of what we saw during the middle part of the season, where they were just constantly getting in their own way, and mistakes were really preventing them from actually being able to take any amount of control in games.
Absolutely. And I will say, we'll talk about all the pomp and circumstance surrounding the Super Bowl later in the show. But moving to the third quarter, I kind of look at this as two things. I've seen a lot of people today, Casen, and maybe you haven't, or maybe you have. Uh, I'm honestly, I was a fan of to see the chess match between um Shanahan and Spagnola. I was really interested in that
Hmm.
chess match, because I would have sat here and said that's going to be your ball game. Like if that is really the matchups here, because I had no doubt that the San Francisco 49ers were going to be at least able to slow down the Chiefs offense, which is what happened. But I'm saying, how is Shanahan going to be able to get through Spagnola, and how is Spagnola going to be able to slow that down? Because And that really did end up being the difference at the very end, skipping ahead. But one huge thing I couldn't really wrap my head around was people saying, like, have the Niners completely abandoned the run. For a while there, I was thinking that as well. But when there were several plays in there where they ran it with Christian McCaffrey and he hit a wall. Like, there were several in the third quarter, and it's like, guys, you have to pass, especially when you have Debo on one side and Kittle and others. I was like, I didn't really agree with the whole they abandoned the run and that's why they lost thing in the
No,
third quarter. I'm like, no, it stopped working.
they abandoned the run because they couldn't.
Because they couldn't run the ball
and
anymore.
they have since, it's like, I think L'Jarius Sneed said after the game where Spagnuolo told them, make Brock Purdy go and win this game.
Yes.
I make him do something and win it, and he did the best he could. It's just that wasn't enough.
Brock
and
played solid. He
because
really did.
Yep. I mean, credit to Spagnuolo, because he said, look, if we're going to lose, it's not going to be because we let Christian McCaffrey win the game. Like, we're going to take out their best player and make the rest of them figure it out.
Yeah, I agree. I will say the Niners arguably did have the best play in the game, and I'm skipping back to the first half, but that gadget play, I think whoever threw the ball became
Juwan Jennings, I think.
Juwan Jennings, yeah. Oh yeah, because he has the one pass for 21 yards here on my box score. First wide receiver, shout out Antoine Randall sent to throw a touchdown in the Super Bowl since him. So that's pretty cool. But back to the second half. I thought the Chiefs did a really good job of adjusting. You could kind of feel momentum swing in the third quarter. And
there was a lot. So you could, I would say at the end of the half, when the Chiefs were finally able to put together a drive and they got points on the board, and so they ended up going into halftime down 7, not 10.
Yeah.
Then they got the ball back. Mahomes ended up throwing a pick, I think, on that play, on that drive out of halftime. But when they ended up basically forcing a punt on that interception, on the ensuing interception possession, and then nothing really came of it, you could feel that, like, the chance that the Niners had to really, like, make them pay and go up, maybe 17-3, and they couldn't do it. You were like, okay, maybe this is the game. That
it was kept going. I mean, my phone like exploded when Mahomes threw that pick. Right? It's like,
yeah,
oh no, Mahomes is gonna, like. I think everyone, if you wanted the Chiefs to lose that game, which admittedly part of me did, and we'll get to that later on. Probably more of me. I was rooting for the Niners that whole game. I'll just be honest. And I still had this thought of, there's a whole half left, y'all. Like, I have a few people text me. I was like, whoa. I was like, hang on a second. It is by no means over.
I do think, though, of like, they really didn't. I mean, that's a different conversation, but, like, Romo didn't really talk about it enough. But, like, that was a really bad throw. I mean, that might be the worst throw I've ever seen Mahomes make. Well, it was terribly placed.
It was so bad that he was forcing it to Kelce. That was before they really realized that you got to go kind of elsewhere. And this is actually one of the notes that I wanted to go ahead and just say, because I took a couple notes in prep for today's show. A lot of the time in these Super Bowls, especially recently, with how good a lot of these play callers and schemers are, the game really in the Super Bowl comes down to everyone else. How many times have we in the last really 10 years have we talked about how, oh, this player is going to be a key player, oh, this player is going to be a key player? You know who really wasn't a key player outside of one play in this game? Travis Kelce. I mean, Mahomes obviously is going to be a key player because he's a quarterback, and the quarterbacks are always going to be that way. But it's everyone else. Pacheco, the guys down the stretch. I mean, it's like the Patriots really were great at this because literally no-name guys would become household names because of their Super Bowl play.
I mean, in the first half, they definitely shut him down.
The whole game.
Yeah,
the whole game makes a difference.
Travis ended up getting 93 yards by the time the game was over.
Yeah,
but a lot of that, I think, was the fourth quarter and overtime.
Yeah, he had a whole overtime. Yeah, with 5 quarters. My point is that when it comes down to the actual game itself, you have, like, it seems like everyone else is really where the gap is made or break.
Which to be fair is a really smart way for defenses to play. I mean, obviously, like, you're gonna like it's easy to kick yourself if you, like, let CMC or Kelce or Debo completely annihilate you and win the game for the team, or for the opposing team. But if you make sure to shut down all of the all pros on the opposing team, and then you're like, if Jawan Jennings has 10 catches for 250 yards, whatever, like that, like
Yeah.
it is what it is. Like, good for him. I mean, that's the thing, is that like it comes down to, is everybody else's supporting cast, or is the opponent supporting cast better than mine? And you have to make their other players beat you. And I think that's just what ended up happening. I mean,
I agree. Let's move on here because I honestly I it became increasingly serious. I have to give shout out to the defense of the Niners because they bent and they bent and they bent and they didn't break until literally the last play of the game last series. They
mhm.
had the Chiefs on the ropes several times, including before overtime even started. They were the ones. I thought, to be honest with you, I thought the end of the game was going to be. Let me back up. The way things ended in overtime, I swore that was how things were going to end, but in regulation. I said,
Mhm.
okay, they kicked a field goal, they're up. Kansas City's going to go down here and they're going to score a touchdown, and that's how this is going to end. Like as time
Yeah,
expires,
yeah. I'm
and
surprised they didn't.
I even said if I was an NFL script writer, I would have it be like literally Mahomes breaks 3 tackles, he throws it opposite side of the field, it goes through, it bounces off like 3 people in the audience and a rabbit, and somehow flips back towards it goes through the uprights and then lands right into Travis Kelce's hands as he's laid out at the very corner of the end zone as it
I
falls into the pylon, and it's the greatest play in NFL history.
Well, here's the
I'm
thing
only
though.
kind of kidding.
They try Patrick tried to give Travis the game winner. Did you see that?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, the final play before they ended up kicking the field goal, it was a quick pass to Travis, which he had it. It's just it was a little
Well,
too it was a little too
he
kind
had
of
that like 25
towards
yard scamper though,
yeah.
where he caught it in the midfield and then he went up the side. I swore I thought he's about to score a touchdown. This is
Yeah.
literally how it's going to end. I was very mad when it happened, and I was very happy when he was stopped because I thought, listen, if the Chiefs are going to win this and prove me correct for my pick, can it please not be him who wins it?
Well, we were sitting there, and because we had this conversation the last show, and we were like, in what context of this game would like Travis Kelce win Super Bowl MVP and it not be warranted to give it to Mahomes?
Yeah,
And I think in the context of Travis getting 100+ yards receiving with the game-winning touchdown and Mahomes looking very average, that's the context.
right.
And like we were like, if Travis wins this game, he's getting MVP.
I actually thought about that too, and especially if he had gotten the game winning touchdown because the one guy on the Chiefs that you can give it to outside of Mahomes in that context is Kelce. I thought there was a slight
Which it would have felt like the Edelman MVP, where it was like
right,
kind of a legacy MVP, where it was like, yeah, sure.
right. I personally think that like say moving on to overtime, let's say like he like flipped it in a pitch route to Pacheco and he just broke 3 tackles and got the touchdown in overtime to win it. I saw an avenue where he could have won it, mainly because he had a great game. Like he
Yeah.
was in on the whole game. Like he was a problem for them the entire game. He went toe to toe with his counterpart, McCaffrey, and looked like he belonged as well. Like, hey, don't forget about me. I'm a problem too. So I could have seen that too, but you're right. That definitely would have been the case. Um, I want to shout out a couple of dudes, quite frankly, because uh, I wanted to shout out rookie kicker Jake Moody for the 49ers, who it's funny because there were some incredible special teams on display in this game as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I think first time in Super Bowl history where the Super Bowl record for long kick was kicked and then it was eclipsed by the other kicker in the same game, went 55 yards
Yeah.
to 57 yards. I was like pulling up Jake Moody.
Which that is just crazy to me that 55 yards broke the record. I mean, I guess in Super Bowls you're not really normally settling for 55-yard field goals very often. Because because you're probably scoring touchdowns or you're
Harrison
trying to score
Butker is the
touchdowns.
other guy. Those two guys
Yeah.
went toe to toe with each other. I will say this as well. Oh, also, Butker, who was on the team that lost to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl last year, he was an Eagle. I
No,
will
Harrison Butker's been on the Chiefs.
no. I saw this. No. They talked about this during the game. I want to get this right. They literally said that, unless Jim Nantz was wrong.
I think they were talking about somebody else. I think they were talking about
No, they were talking about someone else.
yeah.
Yeah, he's
I
been
know
the
what you're
Chiefs
talking
since
about. Yeah, yeah.
2017.
I remember what you're talking about.
Well,
But yeah, Harrison Butker's been
foot
there.
in mouth on podcast. It's not the last time, or it won't be
That's
the
fine.
last time it's happened.
Um,
Either way, they did great. And I'll say this, and obviously special teams are a big part of the Chiefs' strength. But I was going to say this as well. The 40. Whenever you hear records like that in the Super Bowl, you always think to yourself, I always have to remind myself, this game has only been played 57 previous times.
mhm.
For the longest time, it was kind of wild that I would like to trick people with a trivia question: how many Super Bowls have gone into overtime? Well, before the 28-3 year, and for the longest time, I was like, none, zero have gone into overtime. And now we've had two, which is only fitting for two teams that were so evenly matched going into this game.
I think what you were thinking of was Javon Hargrave, because Javon Hargrave was on the Eagles last year.
I think it was, and I know the young man who caught the actual winning touchdown.
Miko Hardman was
Nicole
on the
Hardman was
Jets.
on the Jets at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And I even heard someone make the joke that he said during Hard Knocks, like, my team's winning the Super Bowl or something. Like, we're going to win the Super
Yeah,
Bowl or
well,
something.
I don't know if you've ever heard of Oz the Mentalist or whatever. He's like kind of in media a lot and doing stuff.
Yeah.
That he did a thing, and like McCole Hardman did this thing where he was like, yeah, I'm going to the Super Bowl against this for the 49ers. And so it was like, technically you were right.
Right. I
But
want to shift, but what was your immediate reaction to when they actually won the game?
Well, so my initial reaction to overtime was pure ecstasy, because I don't know if you saw what I ended up texting you. I ended up winning $300 yesterday, based off of various things. So I was very enthused because I had something that
Oh yeah, you
involved
sent me the parlay. Yeah.
Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and so he had a touchdown, and I needed him to get one more catch, and he didn't get that other catch until overtime, and I was like, I was stressing, and I
That's awesome.
but that ended up happening, and I was very elated.
Well, I'm glad you weren't. Let me just put it this way: you weren't the only person texting me during the game last night with money on the line. Okay.
Yeah.
And what's funny is, without naming names, that other person also ended the night in the green. So there's clearly some smart people in my circle when it comes to picking these ball games.
I mean, it's so, and here's the thing though, is that I think that we can both sit here and say the Niners probably on paper should have won that game handily. They theoretically were the stronger team coming in. They were the 1 seed. They played better all year. They probably have a better roster all around.
But the better team won. I'm sorry,
but
the Chiefs are the best team, man.
If you look at the makeup of the team's personnel and of the actual mind of the players, absolutely, because it comes down. And to me, I thought about this coming in, and that's why I was so hardcore on the Chiefs, was because that game felt like people who have been there before are going to win this. And that whole thing was Andy Reid. He's been there a lot recently, and he knows what it takes. And Shanahan is a really good coach, but he is so into his own mind at this point about these games that it just all falls apart. And it came down to the guys from Kansas City knew what it took to win that game, especially because if you look at all of the Super Bowls they've won now, they were down double digits at one point every single time. And they had to come back.
I got to say this to go off your point about the Niners, because I was really looking through it today, and I had something pointed out to me, and then I did a little bit of my own research. The Niners, out of the last 10 years, I would honestly, as a Steelers fan who, 6 Super Bowls, whatever, been around to see them win 2 more, I would rather take my existence as a Steelers fan over the last, like, maybe not like 20 years, but at least the last 5, over what the Niners fans have been through. When you look at like the injuries they had a year ago at the Eagles, they came real close against the Legion of Boom. They've had some of the worst luck, losing, having great performances against great Packers teams, and then ultimately losing, going all the way back to when the Patriots were still dominant. They lost to the Giants twice. Like, it's actually been brutal how good they've been. They made it to two Super Bowls. One they got demolished until the lights went out, or it was going to be a blowout. They lose Alex Smith. They find that Colin Kaepernick's good. They get there. They lose. They get to the Super Bowl and unfortunately become the first victim of what was going to become the Chiefs dynasty, only to then eventually succumb to them again. You know, 4 years later. I mean,
Hmm.
it's been a brutal stretch to be a fan of that team. And I actually was sitting here thinking about this. If there's one fan base that probably despises the Kansas City Chiefs, it's got to be the 49ers fan base, right? I mean, you've now lost to them in the Super Bowl twice.
Well, I mean, especially because you think of like how intertwined they are. I mean, there was a lot of talk about this when they met in the Super Bowl the first time
Yeah.
about it being the Joe Montana Bowl, the Alex Smith Bowl. Just kind of about how like
Yeah.
about the Chiefs always seem to end up with the 49ers old quarterback and they're just a very intertwined they're two very intertwined franchises.
Yeah.
And
They both are
having now
very old
lost to them
franchises.
twice,
Yeah.
yeah, I would imagine that they're basically building up a pretty heated rivalry at this point.
And just to kind of shift gears to the Chiefs, right? The legacy that this is, right? First of all, yes, birth of a dynasty, all that stuff. We don't necessarily need to say anything that hasn't been already said unless you really want to. But I've also thought about this. I was trying to think about this in relation to the dynasty we've been alive to see, right? And the Patriots. First of all, Mahomes is absolutely on pace to potentially eclipse Brady. They're already talk. I've already seen things. It's like, we're absolutely going to be talking about three-peat up in here. I heard someone say something along the lines today of are we starting to have to begin the conversation of, is Mahomes the greatest, not just quarterback ever, but like, is he one of the greatest top 5 professional athletes of all time? And I'm like, well, if he is, and if he's going to become that, we're seeing the very beginning of it. And that very thought scares me, because when I was literally 20 years ago this NFL season, when I watched Brady destroy my Steelers in Ben Roethlisberger's rookie season, where we discovered how good he was, and win their back-to-back Super Bowl, their second Super Bowl back-to-back against the Eagles. No part of me fathomed I'm going to see at least Tom Brady win this 4 more times in my life,
Hmm.
at least him individually. And I'm going to see the Patriots win it 3 more times. Um, what's spooky to me, and I know there's guidelines, there's guardrails in place to make sure dynasties don't, continue. What spooks me is that the Chiefs seem more poised than even that team to really explode here for a number that is going to frighten me. Like, I don't know.
Um,
I
I
still,
mean,
I'll let you respond to that first, because I have another mantra that I've said on this show before, which I'll get to. Go ahead.
I would say next year's probably the last real solid chance because I mean, as anybody knows, Mahomes signed a 10-year, $500 million contract a couple years ago after their first one. And I mean, I think he had the highest cap hit of any winning quarterback in the Super Bowl ever. And so he's on the books for 50 million plus. As of now, next year, I think Travis is on the books for 15. A lot of the defense, I think they said that Chris Jones was the only guy who was on the first Super Bowl against the 49ers on the defensive side.
Yeah.
So that's a really young defense, but they're all going to be coming up for new deals soon. So it will even out. It'll come to a point where they're going to have to start letting guys walk and sort of retooling the roster from a salary cap perspective. And, Travis is going to retire eventually. So it'll get to that point where it will eventually even out, but probably they have another year or two to give another to get another
Before
chance at it. But
before they would have to, in theory, completely rebuild, similar to
yeah,
how the
yeah,
Patriots had to
yeah.
completely rebuild.
Which, yeah,
Uh,
I mean, the Patriots were sort of irrelevant for like a decade. Like after like they
mhm.
were like pretty much in that whole time span, they were kind of not really what we thought of them as the first.
Right. I mean,
Um,
outside of the Randy Moss year,
mhm.
which they still didn't win it. They still didn't win the Super Bowl then. Made it there. there were pops of greatness, and of course Matt Castle's year was in there. There were a few years in there.
Hmm.
There was a year in there where Brady was hurt, but then they kind of reloaded, retooled. I will say the one huge thing that is going to happen to the Chiefs, regardless of when this little run of theirs ends right now, Andy Reid ain't going to be around for the next rebuild. That's
That
not.
is that is
That's
very
just.
true.
That's
That
just
is
not
very
going to be the
true.
case. Andy Reid is
Yeah.
not. It's not like Belichick where he's like 10 years younger. Like no, Andy Reid is close to the end of his NFL career. Like he is, and that's going to majorly impact them.
I
You
mean,
know,
and another thing is, I mean, I mean, Steve Spagnuolo isn't young by any stretch of the
no, these
imagination. So,
guys, these minds are not
um,
young guys. So
it's
you,
it's yeah. And so it's going to be very different when it's the Matt Nagy coach Chiefs with with Patrick Mahomes.
who knows,
No,
man?
no, but
But
yeah, I mean, so I think this dynasty is not the same thing as the Patriots because
well,
Andy Reid is going to retire at some point
Well,
soon.
until they win like two or three more, it literally cannot be, right? I
Right.
would say it's a dynasty for what it is right now at this very
Yeah.
second in the beginning of 2024.
It's
I
it's a
will
it's a dynasty in the context of ironically like the Bill Walsh Niners sort of like it's sort of like a very small window of time where they're just so dominant for like a 5-year period of
right.
time.
Right. And with any luck in the NFL, we can get to a place where this is the max a dynasty can become, right?
Hmm.
Because I think everyone as fandom can collectively say we do not want a repeat of the Patriots.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that
Let's
that's
gut
sort
this
of
team for parts.
I think we sort of kind of walked ourselves into this talking point, which that's sort of the problem with this dynasty talk of like Andy Reid's leaving soon. Like he's not going to be around for another decade. So he's leaving soon. And so that sort of automatically like waves any conversation as far as the Patriots dynasty
Well,
comparisons.
but Mahomes is not, and he's only 28.
So this is really more of a Mahomes conversation as
Right.
opposed to a Chiefs dynasty
It's
conversation.
sort of like how
But
how we kind of established in this on this. Like I think the proof is out there now. The Patriots dynasty was more Brady than it was Belichick. I think
yeah, yeah.
everyone it worked within the system, but it was more Brady than Belichick. Let's see how like I almost want to see let's see if Mahomes is the able to
Hmm.
sustain kind of the same thing. Needs to be said though. You've heard me say this before, even before we had a long before we had a podcast, my friend. Three peats don't happen. They just don't happen. In the modern age of sports, three-peats don't happen. I kept saying it this year about the Georgia
Hmm.
Bulldogs, and it became very apparent. I'm like, three-peats don't happen. They're not going to win three straight national championships, especially not at the college level. I am absolutely tripling down that, unintended, when it comes to the Super Bowl.
Hmm.
Three-peats don't happen. And quite frankly, if a three-peat does happen next year, then I'll shut up. And I'll be like, oh, I don't know how they did it, because in a lot of ways they shouldn't have done it this year. But three peats just don't happen because they're like impossible. It's just the amount of things that would have to go right for that to happen uh, is just so difficult to make the case. So until I'm proven wrong by some team out there, I'm gonna hold fast to that. You can agree or disagree with me, but you know
Yeah, I mean it's definitely very tough. Um,
that's why it took Kobe to make the last major one happen in sports, in American
yeah,
sports.
I mean it's definitely theoretically possible, but yeah, I mean it would be very difficult in football, and I mean especially with this roster, I mean you're adding another year of age to Travis and Chris Jones, and it's just like I we'll see. I mean I don't know.
Man, I was saying
Um,
that back when the Penguins won back-to-back Stanley Cups. It's like, is it three-peat time? I'm like, I mean, I'll be rooting for it, but three-peats don't happen. Just getting
yeah,
myself psyched in the moment of we're gonna lose, and it's and it's gonna be like,
yeah.
when we do, and that's how it was. Anyway, uh, anything?
Anyway,
Let's. I want to talk about the spectacle surrounding the game.
yeah.
Obviously, yeah, Taylor Swift there, and a lot of celebrities, which is always kind of cool to see who's there. I will say I do get I do think officially, especially this year, the Chiefs have crossed into hated territory. I'm not saying I hate them. I'm just saying they're I'm just saying they're more hateable and dislikable than they've ever been.
Yeah, I mean, because I think everybody can agree that the first year, um, everybody was sort of on board with them because it was like, oh, this isn't the Patriots, it's somebody new. They haven't won since like the '60s, and so it was
Chiefs
cool. It was
Niners the
like,
first time was so
yeah,
refreshing. I was like,
yeah,
either
it was
Jimmy G
great.
or Mahomes are going to win a Super Bowl. Awesome.
And
Then
then the year
COVID
after
happened.
that,
Sorry.
and then people were rooting for them the year after that
Hmm.
when they were playing the Bucks, because they were like, oh, we don't want Tom Brady to win another
Oh
one,
yeah, I was
so they were
rooting
rooting for
heavily for the.
them.
I was rooting heavily for the Chiefs that year. Yes.
And then it was like, and then everybody outside of the Philadelphia area was rooting for the Chiefs against the Eagles. And so this is really the first time when they were like sort of the least likable option.
Yeah. I well, I'll admit, like it's funny because people did ask me that. It's like, am I rooting for the Eagles or am I rooting for the Chiefs to win it again? I'm like, I mean, I'm tired of the Chiefs, but I will never root for Philly to have any happiness. So,
Right.
yeah, I was like, Chiefs, make it happen, man, beat them. And so the Pittsburgher in me. But yeah, this is like the villain territory. This was like the season, and really, it
Hmm.
happens with every team. You know, it's like when the Warriors were first up there. You're a Cleveland fan, so taking that out of the equation, when the Warriors first made it, it was like, oh, cool, Steph and the Splash Brothers. Then it was like, then that well, and then like when when Durant went there, they were immediately hated. It was like, oh, okay, well,
Hmm.
so none of us have any chance. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, because like it was sort of a very weird situation. Because like I remember there was this dude in my high school that was like wearing a Steph Curry jersey in like 2013.
Yeah,
And I was like, I was like, that's really weird. It was like they're kind of irrelevant. and then just a few years later. But well, I mean, I'm trying to think back on like the 2016 finals, and like so the 2015 run when they won the first time, when the Golden State won the first time, it was like super refreshing, I think, for a lot of people, because it ended, the Miami years and the LeBron years and the
the
San Antonio.
Spurs years.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
ended a lot of the like Spurs Heat sort of
right.
exhaustion. And then the next year, I think it was just sort of like, I also felt like everybody was on their side, because it was like them going up against LeBron, and
Yeah.
the from an outside Cleveland perspective, like the villainness of LeBron winning again. But I mean, I think at a certain point people were like, okay, it's Cleveland, so it's like whatever, it's Cleveland.
Yeah,
Um
when the third year in a row when it was Cleveland and like the period of time where it was like you and them, you as in Cleveland and the Warriors 3 straight years, that became I just want to see you both lose because I
yeah,
just because it's bad for the league. But
yeah,
not trying to digress too much though. Um, like we see this happen. I mean, dominance leads to eventually you're disliked by everybody because we just one as fans we want to see someone else win, but
yeah.
two we wish our if you are a fan of a team we want to see our team do that. It's sort of like when I joke with people with my friends from back home in Pittsburgh. It's like they're like, why can't we? I even said this. I sent this. I got a note about this. The Steelers tweeted and put something on Instagram last night that was like, the 2024 season starts now. Like hashtag here we go. And I screenshotted that and I sent that to my friends and I said, listen, I'll retweet this and repost this because I'm a fan, but it's like they're playing a different sport we are. Compared to the two teams I just watched
Yeah.
playing that game, it's like we are so far away from even the other teams like in the playoffs, let alone like we're not sniffing the Super Bowl against one of those guys in a long time. So I'm kind of sitting here like, well, yeah, whatever, cool, whatever. Kind of coming back to I heard this TikToker say this, and we all know this. Being a sports fan is like 99% like disappointment. Like it just is. But at the same time, we do it because we're all psychos. Anyway, not to get too philosophical up in here, but I think this is going to be fascinating to see kind of how the whole this whole public thing of just like we will tell our kids years from now and our grandkids about like yeah that year where Travis Kelsey and Taylor Swift became a thing and they were both like two of the most famous people in the world and then the Chiefs actually went on like the most improbable run ever where they won they won 3 games and literally made it look easy in each of those games and then won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It's
I
like
mean,
it's like okay,
I think it's time to like actually
ridiculous.
is the NFL actually scripted?
Scripted.
Like because we sat here in like October and we were like, okay, so the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl because of Taylor Swift. Like
Yeah, I was like,
it was the most obvious thing on the
I
planet.
was like, okay, they're going to win the Super Bowl. Like it just and this and they're and like the NFL is going to add a whole nother $1 billion because of this, and that's essentially what happened.
And it was like and there's the whole logo thing. People were like, oh, the Niners Ravens, and then somebody was like, yeah, and the only reason the Ravens weren't there is because they caught an audible in like September when Travis started dating Taylor Swift,
Yeah,
and they were like, oh, okay, got to replace
they were like,
the
yep, just
Ravens with the
kidding.
Chiefs.
Yep. I do want to kind of get into just a little bit before we shifted into the pop culture side of this of the evening. Early odds to win the Super Bowl next year, like the top of the list of the one I'm seeing as of this morning is the Niners, because you take a team this good and you give them another edge of another year of hunger on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
I can see it. The Chiefs are going to be a year worse. I think the Niners are going to be a year better. Your usual suspects are in there. Let me actually just go ahead and pull this back up. Ravens, Bills are obviously up there. The Bills, discount the Bills because as we've talked about, that'll never happen. Um, but it's just fascinating to see who kind of like who could come out of the woodwork. But I heard someone make a big deal about the fact that here in like a year or two, we're only going to have like one quarterback we're only have like two quarterbacks we're going to have one quarterback rather in the NFL who has won both the MVP and the Super Bowl here soon. And I'm like, yeah, guys, that's only going to be a thing for maybe a year because I really think next year some other quarterback's going to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, well,
So, I mean,
that's a very So somebody did point that out, and I'd see that is that like because if you look at it right now, the only two quarterbacks in the league, the only quarterbacks in the league right now that have won a Super Bowl is it just Mahomes and Aaron?
yeah,
Those are the
that's the
only two
point.
active quarterbacks that have won a
Correct.
Super Bowl at all.
That's the point I'm making.
And
Yes.
which is just crazy.
Yeah.
And that is crazy.
Yeah.
Mm.
Hey man, 6 years just winning all that stuff. I mean, it's a long time, Um, yeah, because who was the last Super Bowl winner quarterback to not be Mahomes? It was Tom Brady. So, um, yeah, I just putting things into perspective. That's the only reason I brought that up is because bottom line, the reason I say it is we need someone to rise.
Mm-hmm.
We need someone to rise to battle Mahomes. It's not going to be Josh Allen, at least not where he currently is. We need someone else to rise, and I don't want it to be the Ravens because it's clearly not going to be
Oh
them.
well,
We need CJ Stroud to like
Matt Stafford. We totally forgot about Stafford, but
Stafford. Yeah, we did forget about him. Yeah, I think that's it though. Those three, and Stafford's not going to be around much longer.
Yeah.
So
I think from the AFC though, I think it's just those two. Yeah, because I'm trying to think about. Yeah.
anyway, I would like to. You want to shift into the other stuff regarding the Super Bowl? How'd you like the halftime show, Usher?
Yeah, I thought it was I thought it was okay. It was good. I mean, it was um I'm I I'm not really like the biggest Usher fan of like knowing his deep catalog stuff.
Sure.
So, I mean, I knew the big ones, the big hits, but I thought yeah, it was cool.
He did. I'll just say this: he did all but one song that I wanted him to do. As someone who actually did grow up listening to a decent amount of Usher, and that became less and less as I got older. Let's be real, I fit more the demographic who would listen to his music. So,
Yeah.
and just to be blunt, like and that's not like just being. That's just being real. The more R&B he was known for. Burn, he did. That's like probably my favorite Usher song. The horn section, loving this club, stuff like that. But the appearance of Lil Jon and Ludacris, I was like, oh, that's pretty awesome. We're just doing the whole thing. But it's always about the spectacle, right? And they've shown, like Rihanna last year, they've shown that they can do a lot with her not really moving around, but they put her on those platforms, right? With this, it was clear they wanted to be heavy on dance, but like they're not, they kept it all horizontal, right? He's out there on the skates. That was probably the most impressive part for me, just because that's like incredibly tough to do, to just skate around and have that all choreographed, and obviously they all practice it and all that. What else? The only song he didn't do that I like is "You Remind Me of a Girl." You Remind Me. That song, it would have been cool. I would have even, it's more of a ballad type song, and I would have, I can see you just texted me. So let me just finish my thought.
That's my favorite opinion on the show, and
Okay,
you'll just
give me
react
a
to that.
second. Let me finish my thought, and then I'll do this thing where, of course, I react to probably something ridiculous that you've sent me that I can't say what is. But yeah, You Remind Me would have been, if it were me, I would have began the whole thing with You Remind Me, because it's like has a
Hmm.
slower beginning, and then I would have done everything else. Let's see what ridiculous thing you sent me, because this is always something. Oh, come on! I thought it was going to be a picture. Okay, I'm not even gonna. I
It
can't
is a
even.
picture, yeah.
I can't even. Yeah, it's one of those things where, like the other time, I can't even say what that is.
But
Anyway,
yeah, I did see a lot of people, which would have been funny. A lot of people were thinking like maybe he's going to bring out Justin Bieber.
yeah.
People thought that
Well,
might happen.
we know what's funny is that, like, in terms of their cultural impact on pop, like at the time, Usher and Justin Bieber have actually been like compared to each other. Not in terms of
Hmm.
like their music, but like in terms of influence and like the way they influence their respective genres.
Hmm.
And not only that, I'll just point this out because Usher got really famous at a young age before like his voice changed, and it like
Hmm.
kind of made his career have to change as he got older. Justin Bieber went through the same thing. So they've been compared to each other and all that stuff. Um, I also, oh yeah, shout out to Alicia Keys. That was the memes. I'm
Hmm.
not going to say it, but the memes surrounding that today have been quite funny as well. So, but she was fantastic. She always is as well. So, yeah, I see you laughing, and yes, I've seen some funny things today regarding the thing that we're both thinking of. But
Yeah, yeah.
I will also say, solid, my favorite Super Bowl halftime performance of all time. Do you know what it is? I've told you before, and it's not even close. It's not even sort of close.
Um, I don't know
I
for I have an idea, but I don't know for sure.
the Well, first of all, number one for me will always be number one. I've never seen one even come anywhere close to it. When Prince did "Purple Rain" in the pouring down rain in Miami,
Hmm.
that's the best Super Bowl halftime performance of all time.
So funny
This,
story about that. I remember watching that too live, and
mm-hmm,
I think at the time I would have been 9. I don't know for sure what year that I would have been, probably somewhere around 9.
yep.
And my thought was, why are they playing in the rain? Like, isn't he gonna get electrocuted playing on
Well,
guitar?
what's funny is like it spectacally made it incredible. And Prince, who was like the chillest guy on earth, right? They actually said all the producers were really worried, and they went through all the checks, and technology was not what it is today about in terms of the water damage and things like that. I mean, it was that many years before
Hmm.
now. And they're like, they said to Prince, like, he's like, it's going to be raining during the game. And Prince was like, yeah, I know it's raining. And he famously said, are you worried about the rain? And Prince famously told the producers, can you make it rain harder? Because he knew because he knew the show was going to end with Purple Rain. So and everything worked out. You know what I mean? It's incredible. They're doing this in the rain and all the spectacle. So that's what makes it work. Like, not it didn't ruin the show, right? If anything, it made it better.
Hmm.
It's one of the two halftime shows that I've actively gone back and watched. The other one, Dr. Dre in L.A. That was just
Yeah,
and
I knew that had to be, yeah.
that's for me. That's the number two. For me personally, there was no universe in which I ever thought the NFL would allow them to do that. What they did with those artists, with that selection for Los Angeles, that was perfect, and it was like as good as it possibly could be with Kendrick and everybody,
Hmm.
Eminem, Dre, Snoop. It was awesome. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on the halftime show. Uh, do you have anything more to say, or do you want to talk about everything else?
Um, no, I mean, I think that just about sums it up. I mean, I think it was not a show catered to my demographic, but I thought it was good.
It was
And
solid.
those who
Uh,
enjoyed it.
I have to say, one of my favorite moments of the evening that had nothing at all to do with the game, was when the coin toss happened, and then immediately we go to commercial. We'll be back. Like, coverage of the Super Bowl will begin, and then immediately I hear the Chicago Bulls like music flare up, and I just see Deadpool. Deadpool 3,
Hmm.
it's like trailer online right now. It's like, hey, you ready? Because I'm coming to your cinematic universe. The Deadpool trailer dropped, and I want to talk a few about some of the, like, we can talk about whatever trailers, but I want to get
Yeah,
into this because the Deadpool trailer dropped, and it's not called Deadpool 3. It's called Deadpool and Wolverine, which is
yeah,
awesome,
yeah.
which is incredible, which is all kinds of amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess yeah. Spoilers if you haven't watched it, but go watch it.
Yeah, go. It's a trailer. Go watch. It's a
It,
teaser. Even it's not even a trailer. Go watch
yeah,
it.
I clearly, as we expected, after his little time travel at the end of Deadpool 2, you know, he gets hunted down by the TVA
Immediately.
immediately.
It's like, hey, man, and it's the new TVA. You know, it's the new cool TVA.
And was that the guy from Succession?
I think so. Yes.
I think that Tom, I think is the guy
Yeah.
from the. I was like that. I didn't even know. I didn't know he was going to be in this movie.
I love how we're literally just doing the trope of, oh, so the TVA is just gonna pluck him from one universe and put him in another one.
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
That's cool. And we're gonna make him just like a super traveling thing. I will say, having watched that teaser a few times, it looks like that like last battle or like one of the battle sequences there is in front of the destroyed 20th Century Fox logo.
Yeah, yeah. I think we
I'm
saw that from set photos.
yes,
Yeah,
and I am very much wondering, is this whole movie just going to be one giant metafest? Like where it's just
it's going
all
to
in the
be. Yeah.
literal, like at some point they're just in our actual universe. And it's like, okay, time to jump back into the MCU.
Well, we saw him he made a Disney joke in the trailer.
He did. He
So we
did.
did see
Yeah.
that.
I mean,
Um,
if you're not familiar out there with Deadpool, the whole shtick with Deadpool is that he's aware he's a fictional character. He's completely self-aware. He knows he's a fictional character, which is why his stories are always hilarious because he just doesn't care. And the things he does care about, and that's why I've always said, in some ways, Deadpool's like the smartest Marvel character there is, because he's like on another level of he has an intelligence literally on our level in our
and to be perfectly honest, there is one human being on the planet who can play Deadpool.
Ryan Reynolds.
And that's Ryan Reynolds.
I yeah.
cannot think of anybody else in Hollywood that could possibly play him anywhere close to how well Ryan Reynolds plays him.
I think, and I don't say this lightly, Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, Wade Wilson is like Tony Stark levels of with Robert Downey Jr. in terms of you literally cannot have it. Like the actor and the character are almost not. You don't see him as like I don't see Ryan Reynolds.
They're
Ryan
symbiotic. They're
exactly.
the same thing.
They're the same thing. I mean, for me, Chris Evans is that with Captain America. Like that's Steve Rogers. Like I can't like I see him as Steve Rogers in anything else I see him in. Like that's Tony Stark and anything else I see him in. To be honest with you, that like all of that original Avenger cast is that way. Hemsworth, ScarJo, you know, they're all that way.
Yeah.
But like this movie is cool because it's going to be in the MCU and they're interchangeable with each other, and it makes it even better that half the time Ryan Reynolds can just flip into character and it's like you don't even know he's in character. Like he quips on set and they're like, go with it. Like he improvises so many things. You know,
I mean, even Hugh Jackman as Wolverine was Mount Rushmore level casting as well.
That's the same thing, same exact thing. This movie's going to be two actors in that like level with two incredibly popular Marvel characters playing off each other, and I wouldn't be surprised. For me, the first two Deadpools are kind of instant classics. If they can wrap this up in a way that makes his trilogy incredible, but also sets him up to like do a lot of cool stuff as they start to bring in the X-Men. This has all the makings of all the classic ways, and I think even ways that we haven't even, you know, considered. Tying it into last night's stuff, I will say it was pretty great to see. You have Taylor Swift in the box next to Brie Lively, right?
Blake Lively.
Blake Lively, excuse me. I said Brie. I almost said Brie Larson. Blake Lively, and you have Ryan Reynolds literally putting on his Instagram, "Hey, check out this Deadpool stuff. By the way, has anyone seen my wife?"
yeah. I thought that was so funny
because apparently he was not there. It's like
he was.
It would make sense.
Would imagine,
he's probably at home.
Yeah, I also don't think he cares about American football that much. We've talked about Wrexham and he's Canadian. He doesn't care about American football.
We know he's a sports fan, but what's funny is like one of the things with Wrexham that he got involved with is because it was an American football. Like he's a bigger hockey and soccer fan and stuff. So like, yeah, it makes sense. So anyway, yeah, any other thoughts on that? It was a great teaser. I didn't think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it didn't show too much. From what I saw, it looked like there were some clips hinting at Ultron, Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
So there might be some flashbacks to old Marvel, to old MCU Avengers movies. So we'll be like going back in time to that, like we did um, in the like the most of Endgame to maybe prune people or whatever. So that would be very interesting.
It's been said to death too. His suits never looked better. That
Yeah,
is 100% what Deadpool looks like. Every little detail was lit. That was great. Wanted to point this out as well. There were a few more trailers in that, but the one that really caught my attention was I've never seen the musical, but I want to. We got a trailer for Wicked during the Super Bowl. You're
yeah.
shaking your head. Come on, what do
Yeah.
you mean?
Maybe other people have other opinions, but like,
Here we go.
don't do this. I
What do you
no,
mean don't do
no.
this? You're one of those.
It's just remaking this with different people is just the weirdest idea I've ever heard of.
Well, hang on a second.
Like,
I think what you're really getting at here is, and I've talked about this before. Maybe not on the show, but I've talked about this before. Like movie versions of classic and beloved musicals are very, very hit and miss, and when they miss, they really miss.
yeah, I mean, because you're talking about one of the most popular musicals in of the last 20 years with two of the most iconic Broadway singers, Kristen Chenoweth and Idina Menzel. Like and you're replacing them with Ariana Grande, and I mean, no offense to her, but somebody I've just never heard of before.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like this is not really, along with the fact that nobody asked for this. Like, I don't like it, again, what is up with all of this stuff that nobody's asking for? Like,
Well, that's what Hollywood
if
does.
you would have given us like a movie remake with Idina Menzel and Kristen Chet, like with most of the original Broadway cast,
Right.
that probably would have been a very different story. But it's just kind of like, what is anybody even like? What are we doing here? Like, this is just
Well,
pointless.
well, I to be honest with you, it had such its time, and it's been on Broadway for many, 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 many years now that I'm actually kind of surprised that this wasn't attempted sooner. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's also part of it too. Of it's if it's like it's been so long since like the peak Wicked like time period to me was like 10 years ago.
Oh
Like
yeah. Well,
if they would have made this movie 10, 15 years ago, it would
right.
have
I
made
mean,
way more
the
sense.
years were, it would be like if they came out with an actual movie, which they kind of did, but not in the day. It was a movie of the stage production, but it would be like if they came out with like a Hamilton movie where it was all staged and set with a different cast and stuff, like 6 years from now, to where it's been like a
Yeah,
good 10
yeah.
years since the musicals come out. It's been like
With
12
like
years.
nobody involved,
Yeah.
like Lin-Manuel Miranda completely uninvolved,
Completely uninvolved.
not even
Yeah.
in it, and we're just like, what are we doing? Like, what?
I don't know. I've never. Oh, the one thing I did want to say though is to me there's something to be said for experiencing a certain point of media in the way that it was originally put out there. And actually, when I first said this to someone, I was applying that to the Last of Us series and how important and how popular that got on HBO, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I said, yeah, but the thing is, its original media was the video game, right? And
Mm-hmm.
to me, it's a more impactful story when you're the one having to make the decisions of this journey, right? In moment to moment. Wicked, I would rather see it on Broadway before I saw this movie,
Yeah.
right? So that it's not compared in any way to this, right?
Look, and
So
I do want to just at least emphasize, like, I
sure.
am not in any way, shape, or form hating on Ariana Grande
No, 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 no.
or anybody else affiliated with the movie. Get your bag, do the movie, get paid to do your job. But I'm more so saying, like, again, like with the Mean Girls musical movie,
Mm.
like why are the studios doing this? Like, this is more of just like, what are we doing making these movies to begin with?
Well,
Like,
here's the thing. This is not Wicked, but I will say in the case of Mean Girls, at least Mean Girls the film was based on an older play, and I want to say that like which loosely, but this new Mean Girls is based on the one that became a cult classic that we remember with Lindsay Lohan and Rachel McAdams.
yeah.
And at least they're making it a different thing. At least it is not
So
just a retelling. So
So yeah,
I
so
don't want to. We're
it's a
not
movie based on a musical that was
right
based on a movie that was based on a play.
on a
Like,
play.
it
Yeah,
is the most insane thing, and it's just sort of like,
new Mean Girls.
it's just
Anyway,
I think it just comes back to studios are lost and they're very unaware
well,
of
hey,
what to do.
there's only one more trailer that looked really awesome, and that is Twisters. Twisters looked cool.
I mean,
And
again, meh.
Casen's not a
I
fan.
mean, again, why are we remaking all these movies? Like,
Hey,
it's just infuriating to me.
it stars Hangman from Top Gun Maverick. So that's cool.
Glenn Howerton.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what he's like all over the place now. He's in
Yeah.
like everything now. It's really weird.
He's in a rom
But
com. He's in a rom com with Sydney Sweeney. Like he's hey man, hey the guy's got range. Not really. He's pretty stationary. But anyway, um, anyway, it just looked cool. But really, I just wanted to bring that up mainly to talk about those movie trailers and get your less than lukewarm.
yeah, I mean, my general reaction to that is just like make an original movie for once,
Make
guys.
better
Like
stuff.
I don't like stop doing remakes of movies that came out 30 years ago. Like stop doing
Yeah.
it.
All right. Well, moving on, man. What were some of your favorite commercials? Because I'm going to go ahead and say this, maybe an unpopular opinion. I thought this was a fantastic year for commercials. In recent years that really have not had very many. It started with obviously the Paramount Mountain one, which you sent around, which they put out early, which I'm like, why are they putting it out early? And then I saw it and I was like, that's why you put it out early, because that's one of the funniest commercials I've ever seen. Um, but I wrote down a few of my like ones that I just thought were amazing. So I don't know if you have any, but
um so here's the thing. I wasn't able to actually really pay attention to the commercial all that much just because of the nature of the situation I was in watching the game.
hmm.
But all time number one commercial that I think is one of the better commercials I've ever seen has to be the Dunk Kings.
Dunk Kings was yes, that is on my list.
Elite commercial.
That was one of the like if when a Super Bowl commercial makes me laugh throughout the whole thing and almost like till I cry. That was incredible. The whole concept of it and everyone involved, and it just kept going. I was like, wow, this it's
I mean, you've got
everyone's
Tom
self-aware.
Brady, you've got Matt Damon. And then at the end he goes, "How do you like them donuts?"
Yeah, I like you got Affleck and J Lo who like were cool with it, I guess, and you got like just it's just amazing. Yeah, it was very very good. I have another one here. I thought the Christopher Walken one was incredible. Everyone was just doing impressions of him.
Yeah, yeah.
That was great. And then similar kind of thing where it's funny the way he talks. The State Farm one with Arnold Schwarzenegger, ending with Danny DeVito
Oh,
was
yeah, that one. Yeah.
hilarious. And what was
Yeah.
even funnier is that they did it because it went into overtime. I'm like, what do these studios do when they go into overtime? Well, what they do is they play one of those Super Bowl commercials again in overtime, but shorter, so you get to see it twice. And I was like, are we just going to see more of these same commercials again? Um, so yeah, that was pretty great. And then I have one more here. Thought the Doritos commercial with the grandmothers that initially walked into the store with Jenna Ortega, and then they're fighting, then they're like chasing that guy for the bag of like the new Dorito thing. PepsiCo doesn't let a Super Bowl go by without putting something out there. But
Yeah, I think I must have missed that one, but yeah, that sounds very very entertaining.
but you stumble upon one little thing I was going to go on a rant about last week had we had a prediction show, and it's that unpopular opinion. In my whole life, not a big fan of Super Bowl parties. There, I said it. I don't know if I'm not
Yeah.
saying I don't know if you were at a party, but let me just get this out of my system. I'm not necessarily talking about like a small get together where you're actually watching the game. That's what I would prefer. I'm talking about where you go to like a big group of people and like half to two-thirds of the people are not paying attention
Oh,
to the game.
yeah, no.
I
So
don't. I went to a
yeah.
few of those in college, and I was like, this is the worst experience, and I actually want to watch the game. And if you recall, like we had a few of those even like when I lived, where we had some people at our place, but it wasn't so many people to where we weren't watching it. One of which was the 28-3 year. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
which
So
which made that experience that much wilder. But
I was in a group of about 6 people, so it was
that's what I'm
not that
talking.
big.
That's good.
So it was fine. But yes, when I was growing up, pretty much every year we would go to a party that involved probably like 20 people, and it
Yeah.
was always a disaster. It was like everybody was talking at the same. It was just always a disaster.
Right. And if anything, this was probably the very, very rare situation where there would be enough people at your Super Bowl party that would be watching the game. And if for nothing else, for Travis or T Swift or the game or whatever, there was enough spectacle to keep people engaged. So anyway, mini rant over. Um, let's see here. Do you have anything else or do you want to get into of the weeks? So I'm ready for of the weeks.
Yeah, let's get into it. There's a lot of random things to discuss from the last week.
Why don't you start us off?
Okay, so I will I think it's gonna be sort of going back a ways. Um but I I do want to say, I don't know, did this ever get confirmed or what? But maybe casting announcement of the week goes to Pedro Pascal.
As Reed Richards?
Yeah.
I mean, sure. It's
I mean,
been
it sort of like just got like announced at some event, and then they were like, "Oh yeah, that is a thing." They haven't really talked about it, but it's weird that they kind of just didn't really address that.
that is strange. I know what you're talking about, but I think it's generally believed and it's generally believed and confirmed that he is at least Reed Richards. There's been nothing to confirm the other three.
Yeah,
So
which is very weird.
yeah,
Very weird.
but Reed Richards is the most important character of the four of them. So
um, and then the other one that I had, because of how relevant the conversations that we had about it were.
yeah,
Um, I don't know. We might have talked about this before, but the yeah, I think we talked about Ken Dorsey going to the Browns last show. I deserve that after the amount of time that I spent talking about the Bills. That I deserve that one. That one's on me.
yeah,
That one's
yeah.
on me.
I have one which dips into the NFL season. Robbery of the week goes to Myles Garrett. And yeah, yes, we're going to talk about this because it's garbage that he won the NFL Defensive Player of the Year award over TJ Watt, who astutely put out there nothing I'm not used to on Twitter, and instantly every Steeler fan knew what he was talking about. Your thoughts, you ridiculous Browns fan?
I yeah, I don't
What do you
know.
mean?
I mean,
What do you mean? You
I mean, I don't have anything else to say beyond like
he was robbed.
beyond yeah, he was robbed, but I mean, not a dime back. I don't know what else to say. Not a dime back.
Fine, fine. That's
I mean,
there. Okay,
I'm not gonna
okay.
cry
There
about
it is. Okay, there it is. Yeah. Okay. I just wanted you to admit. Okay.
I,
Yeah.
I
He was
agree.
robbed, and I don't
I
care.
agree he was robbed. I'm not going to deny that.
I wanted
But
you to
like,
just say, yeah, he was
am I
robbed,
going
and
to
I don't
lose?
care.
Am I going to lose sleep because my player won DPOI? No.
Okay. Cool. Stefanski winning Coach of the Year. That is absolutely like a correct award of the week.
I will say some of these votes, and so to summarize the NFL awards, the Browns ended up winning Coach of the Year with Kevin Stefanski, Defensive Player of the Year with Myles Garrett, Assistant Coach of the Year with Jim Schwartz, and Comeback Player of the Year with Joe Flacco. The voting for Coach of the Year and Comeback Player of the Year was like insanely close, and from what I could tell, I think I don't remember. I think Joe Flacco ended up winning because he had like more second place votes. And so he just like he like won by like a point or something. It was super close.
I maybe an unpopular opinion, but I think the very idea that DeMar Hamlin would win Comeback Player of the Year is a little bit ridiculous. I've thought that all year, mainly because let me not sound callous in saying that. What I mean by that is if we're judging this by how we usually judge this award, Flacco wins it hands down, no question. If Hamlin had won this, it would have been just the sentiment of what he went through at the end of last year and the fact that he came back and played it all, which would have been fine. But he still was not that big a deal prior to when that happened, and he didn't do much this season either.
Yeah.
So if we're awarding this, if you really want to do that, give him some other award that you just make up into like for the circumstance. Like coming up, like come up with a new award or something if you
So,
want to
some
give
sort of
someone.
perseverance
Yeah,
award or
perseverance.
something. Yeah.
Exactly. Like
The
here's
the
yeah,
Alex Smith Perseverance Award. How
yeah.
about that one?
I've actually thought about that. Total side note: the comeback player of the year award should be named after Alex Smith, but that's a whole other thing. Like I'm actually serious about this.
Yeah.
I really think it should be the Alex Smith comeback player of the year award. Sort of like how I jokingly said Mike Tomlin coach of the year award after he's gone or retires. But anyway,
But anyway,
Alex Smith
going
though. But yeah, going back to that is the belief I've had all year, which is why people like.
yeah.
I actually had some people talk to me about this in my general circle till like they were red in the face, and I was like, listen, I'm not taking anything away. I'm just saying, like the comeback player of the year award, how we normally vote on this is Joe Flacco. You know, that's all.
Yeah,
I'm advocating for a Browns player.
yeah, I mean, obviously, like you want to give credit to the guy who literally died on the field and then ended up playing, like working
Yes,
his way back into being on a roster.
absolutely.
But
that's so outside of the world of just
yeah,
comeback player of the year. Like, dude, you shouldn't even be playing professional sports anymore. Like, create a new award. Heck, call it the DeMar Hamlin something perseverance award. I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
But anyway, yeah, I mean, it. I don't know how I feel, to be honest, about like Joe Flacco winning the comeback player of the year based off of like a month. Like it was literally like 5 games. Like I don't really know for sure how I feel about that. But just because I feel like it should be based more on like a whole season, but it is what it is. And then going back to Stefanski, yeah, I mean, I'm really happy that Stefanski won again. It, look, I can promise you, week 1 in September, when he sort of forgets to run the ball for a quarter, people are going to be calling for him to get fired again. Like it's two-time coach of the year, but he's on a week-to-week contract with the fans.
Yes.
I mean, it's just it's inevitably hilarious, but yeah, I mean, it's great. I'm really happy that the Browns are the Browns, but at least they have a functioning adult human being as the head coach and not some of the other people we've had recently.
Dude,
But
on a serious note, I think the Browns are like legit, and this season showed that they were, and they're truly like back in this, like our division is what our division is, man. One of the best in
yeah,
the league,
yeah.
top to bottom, and we cannibalize each other. But if that show out there isn't show of that, I don't know what is. Another of the week / of the year award I give is shout out just flat out to Cam Hayward, Walter Payton Man of the Year award, of the weekend of the award. And I had forgotten that they straight up honor those guys before the Super Bowl. So I was like, hey, you still can't get away from the Steelers. NFL, we're right here. Walter Payton Man of the Year award. I say that as a joke. It's always awesome to hear like all 32 teams nominate a guy. And I always thought to myself, just to be the nominee, I would be honored, like to even be considered for this award. Cause they all say that's like the award of awards to win, which it is 100%. But like, I love how all of them get to be on the field. It's like, yeah, the Walter Payton Man of the Year, but like all the nominees, I'm like, yeah, it's awesome. Like to hear what these guys are all doing and stuff. Incredible. The other thing, I wanted to acknowledge this. Game intro of the week goes to CBS. That intro to that game, to My Way by Frank Sinatra, literally brought me to tears. Where all the guys are talking, where both Chiefs players and San Francisco 49ers players talking like about their journeys, but like their families are talking about it too as they're on their way up, and they show at the end. Like I was like, oh, that got me. It's like that was so well done, and fit into the theme, I think, because they always try to theme it around the spectacle of wherever the game's being held.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point, and I think all in all, pretty obvious that the league really enjoyed having it in Las Vegas for the first time.
Oh yeah,
it is going to be back there very soon. I can promise you that.
I'll tell you that. Not only that, but let's just be real. That's one of the cooler stadiums in the NFL. It's new.
It seems like it was a really cool time for a lot of people, and it made it really convenient because whenever somebody wins a championship on the West Coast, they go to Vegas to party afterwards anyway, so they're just already there.
Also for them, like if you're like we saw all those images of like the partying afterwards. For them, that game kicked off at what 3:30.
Yeah,
So I mean, game's over. It's your night's just starting. You know,
I think it
something
was
like that.
over. They were probably done with what their obligations were, because I think post game stuff was still going on around midnight Eastern time. But they were probably done with their full obligations by 10 o'clock
Yeah.
Pacific time.
Oh yeah.
So they were hitting the club by 10. I
Exactly.
think I saw that the people were still partying till 5 in the morning in Vegas,
Oh, I'm sure
which
no one went. I'm sure
crazy.
some no one went to sleep. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
you just won the Super Bowl. Uh, and if you're the 49ers, like let's go drown our sorrows or something. We
Yeah.
were in Vegas. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was gonna say it makes me think, hey, Antonio Pierce, get the Raiders good so you can somehow host the Super Bowl there again.
Yeah.
Although it's gonna go through like a bunch more rotations now before it goes back and again. But
Yeah.
I
But
digress. But anyway, yes, it was a great venue. Where's the Super Bowl next year? Do you know off the top of your head?
I think New Orleans. Yeah, New Orleans. New Orleans.
That sounds right. Yeah.
At the Superdome.
And it's the first time it's in New Orleans since the lights went off. So, you know, that could happen.
Is that true?
Pretty sure.
Let me check,
Yeah, go
because
check
that
that
seems a
out.
very long time.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about the last. I mean, like that was when I was a freshman. That would have been about 10 years ago, which in terms of rotation actually makes sense because that Super Bowl happened when I was a freshman at Bowling Green. Ravens and Niners.
Yeah, yeah. So the last
Yeah,
time they hosted was 13.
yeah.
That is crazy.
It's crazy, but it makes sense. You know, it's about a decade. There's only about 10 locations
Also,
that they'll hold it in.
very interesting to note, the last Super Bowl was 13, was the Harbaugh Bowl, Niners Ravens. It's not unlikely that it's also going to be Niners Ravens this time.
Well, it won't be the Harbaugh Bowl. They would meet in the AFC Championship game.
Well, right, but it could be the Niners versus Ravens again.
Absolutely, could be the Niners and Ravens
Very
again.
plausible.
They're both pretty good. Um, yeah. So that was the extent of my sports of the weeks. Well, I do.
It would also be very funny if it was the Niners Chargers with Harbaugh against the Niners.
Yeah, that
That'd
would
be
be.
very funny.
I do have another of the week that is Super Bowl, or I have two actually. My broadcasters of the week go to for of the week, truly for the whole spectacle, go to one SpongeBob SquarePants and play by play and color analyst Patrick Starr,
Yeah,
because the
yeah,
Nickelodeon broadcast was, as expected, incredible. Like the highlights
yeah.
from it were great. I did not flip to it myself, but the internet was doing its thing of letting me know all of the highlights. So I kept like looking, and I looked up a few more today. I'm like, this is just what we need. This is just incredible.
You had Dora explaining what illegal
What
illegal
penalties were?
contact was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like
Where are we going? Back
yeah.
5 yards because it's a penalty.
Yeah. Oh,
Uh,
just great. I mean, hats off to CBS. CBS really went all out. They had a lot of brand integration with their other shows. That they had their following programming on after the show, and Colbert and After Midnight was on, and did a lot of brand integration for the Super Bowl, and it was really great stuff to
dude,
see.
I'm not even kidding. Like, especially the kind of golden age, I always say, of like for Nickelodeon, why I came up when Nicktoons was going head to head with like the cartoons on Cartoon Network. I would have eaten that up at like 7, 8 years old. I would have
Yeah.
said, we are watching the Nickelodeon broadcast and we are not watching anything else. And I think the parents,
And
knowing my parents, they would have gone along with it, because I was a parent, I'd be like, yeah, we can watch that. That's awesome. As long as I get to see the game. I like to see what they do with this. So I think it's a great integration of just making it family oriented, but making it a lot of fun for the adults too. Because I would have been sitting there like, I am down to watch the Nickelodeon. We can absolutely watch the Nickelodeon broadcast. I get to see the game and I get to see the antics with it. That's great. You know? So
yeah, absolutely. And speaking of, I guess, broadcasters, I want to ask you a question.
answer.
Was this the last CBS Super Bowl with Tony Romo?
You know what? it's a good transition you ask me that, because I had someone tell me that they went to the Nickelodeon broadcast just to get away from Tony Romo. I
I
actually had
mean,
someone, a friend, tell me that.
it's very sad at how quickly it's jumped the shark with Romo.
Yeah, I'm a little bit, sad is the right word for it, because when he came onto the scene, he was awesome. Like,
Well, I don't know if we talked about this before, but like a lot of people think that essentially what happened was he was really good when he was commenting upon on players and teams that he played against. And so
mm,
he knew how to be a commenter for defenses and players that he knew and had faced and had played with or against. And so he could add stuff to, yeah, like, I've played this defensive coordinator before, and so I know he's going to do this, or I've played this team before. I know their quarterback's going to want to check to this. Um, but when it's completely flipped and the league's all different and he hasn't really played these people before, he doesn't know what he's talking about because he doesn't have any insight.
well, I hate to put it this way too, but it almost indicates to me of like a reminder for everyone of how bad a quarterback he really was.
I
He wasn't good. Okay,
I was
he
just gonna say Tony
like
Romo, the color commentator, is the Tony Romo of quarterbacks of color
yeah,
commentators.
he's adding the amount of analyzing that he can actually provide, because like just anyone who really knows the business will tell you that broadcasting is really 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 hard to do well, and
Yeah.
you can't like you have to continuously show that you're analyzing, and that your color commentary is good and well researched and actually add something, because it's been most of this season I felt this way. There were multiple times last night where I'll admit I was like, man, it'd really be nice if this was Greg Olson right now. I just kept I
I
said that
I
multiple
was
times. I was like, man,
I was just gonna say, I there is a very good chance that the next Super Bowl on CBS is Jim Nantz and Greg Olson.
I was literally sitting here thinking to myself, if it's true that Fox is going to like force Brady in that booth and force Greg Olson out, I would be CBS and all these other networks immediately calling. So we got to get Greg Olson.
Trade for Greg Olson.
Trade for Greg Olson. Anyone bring him in the booth with Nance. Get him opposite Tirico on NBC Sunday Night Football. Somewhere, get this man in a booth, because I think Greg Olson is like, and like I think Greg Olson is very much like the breath of fresh air and already providing better analyzing potentially than Romo ever has. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I think honestly, because he was a tight end, it's more fascinating because you have to read an offense differently. I don't know, just and you have to read a defense differently.
Well, I think a
So
lot of it too is his personality is just different. Like
yeah,
he's a lot more upbeat than Romo. He's a lot more of an interesting like person to listen to.
he's a lot more
And
of a real. He's a lot more real because he's been involved in a lot of charities. He's gone on Pardon My Take and all these stuff to talk
Mhm.
about the stuff with his son who's been through. I mean, Greg Olson in a lot of ways comes off as a more relatable guy talking to you about football like
Well,
you're a regular human
as another idea, I've seen somebody
fan.
say Amazon, put him on TNF
Ooh,
with Al. I mean, I don't under like Herbie doesn't want to be there. It doesn't make sense for him to be there. He belongs in college. I don't.
well, also can like Herbie's schedule is also insane. I can't imagine
Yeah,
that
I
guy would
he's
want
gonna
to.
have to cut something. Like he
Yeah,
can't
like if
keep
I were
doing
him, I'd be
this.
like, can I not do Thursday night
Mhm.
football considering the games are almost always awful? Like
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
one reason I wouldn't want Greg Olson there. I'd rather have him.
Well,
I want him on America's Game of the Week. Like
in the interest of him, I would want him there because Amazon would pay him probably $100 million.
wow, well, that's true.
Get that back, Greg.
That's true. So anyway, glad we were able to gush there about it. Let me just make it clear: I got nothing against Tony Romo. I really kind of wish that he would somehow get better. I hope there's an avenue by which he can, but
I wouldn't have anything. I mean, if I wouldn't hate Romo being like put into the studio, like I mean, I
one of
don't
the
hate
anchor
Romo.
guys.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't
Yeah,
mind just listening to him talk from at halftime and before the game. Like he can talk about the actual game
I think he would fit in
after it
great
happens.
with the NFL Today guys
Yeah.
out in front. I mean, I think they have the best desk. No offense to Fox or ESPN, I just think they have the best desk right now. Like for the pregame,
Hmm.
I've said all year I wish their pregame show was as long as and like NFL Countdown, because I would love to hear Cowher, JJ Watt, all those guys talk like for 3 hours before the game starts instead of an hour before kickoff. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Instead of Rex Ryan and the only good one on ESPN these days is Randy. I mean, it's like
Mhm.
it's really just because everyone's doing the best they can, but it's a far cry from when it was Boomer and Tommy and all those guys I grew up with in uh Keyshawn Johnson and all those dudes. I mean, I'm nostalgic for that era of Sunday morning like countdown TV. So
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, yes, I think Romo absolutely would fit in perfect with like a panel desk like that. Because that's honestly his level of analyzing is perfect for that. But we'll see. Anyway,
Yeah. And anyway, just to close the loop on this, next year's Super Bowl is going to be on Fox. So, which,
Tom Brady.
unfortunately, yeah, yeah.
It'll be probably
So
Tom
it's
Brady.
it's going to be Tom Brady, and that's going to be very interesting.
Hey, if Tom is good, I'll be here for it. Seriously.
The let me see if I can get the number on that one. So it would be Tom Brady.
Joe Buck?
That's what it was. Was that because Tom Brady was talking about going into the thing and the Super Bowl. The last time he had a Super Bowl in New Orleans was his first Super Bowl
Interesting. Okay.
against
The
I
Rams.
think yeah, against the Rams.
Yeah.
And so because he was talking about how about his first Super Bowl as a player and his first Super Bowl as a commentator, both in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Um,
But back in those days when it was wow, how are the Patriots in this game against the greatest show on turf? And then little did we know
yeah, yeah.
the monster that was going to be created, where they had just discovered Brady that year between him and Bledsoe, and oh, what simpler times! Like 4 years ago, oh, Mahomes and Purdy, this is going to be great. 4 years later, oh, this is awful now. Anyway, I have one last of the week, and this is strictly for someone in my circle. Goes to Usher once again for best abs of the week, which is true.
Yeah.
Is just true.
Yeah.
That's just true. When you're singing like that, and I'm like, oh wow, he's taking off the top part, he's taking off like the thing, and then he immediately takes off the tank top underneath. I was like, oh okay, so he's leaning all the way in as he should, as Usher should.
Mhm.
Anyway, that was the single moment where I was like, okay, yeah, he knows what he's doing. It's like when Adam Levine came out shirtless. It's like, okay, back in his Super
Yeah.
Bowl halftime
Yeah.
show.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like he didn't even bother putting a shirt on. He was like, okay, so
Yeah. Yeah.
that's all my of the weeks, man. Another
Um,
NFL season in the books. Go ahead.
yeah. I've got one more just to
Let's
I
have it.
guess be very niche with it for more Browns news if anybody cares. Real estate purchase of the week goes to the Browns for buying roughly 175 acres of land right by the Cleveland airport, about 15 minutes outside of downtown in Brook Park. It was a pretty big news bomb Thursday or Friday last week at some point. They had to issue a statement after it was sort of circulating on the website formerly known as
I would
Twitter.
think so. Yeah.
And so they had to issue a statement that was basically like, look, we're doing this to pursue options to keep avenues open as we continue to figure out what we're doing. But essentially what it sounds like is this the team wants to build a dome because they want to pursue hosting things like the Final Four, maybe even a Super Bowl, but I don't know if they'd ever come to Cleveland. But they want to pursue hosting things in a dome.
Timeout.
And
Timeout. Yes, they would come to Cleveland if you guys built a state of the art dome. Absolutely. I
I
never
don't
thought
think
they put the draft in
I don't
Cleveland.
think Cleveland has the infrastructure for that. But either way,
That's why they're putting it by the airport, Casen,
Mm,
and out of downtown. They've got
yeah.
this in mind.
But either way,
They would. Okay,
yeah,
continue. Yeah.
I also think that they don't want they've seen what happened in Buffalo and they don't want to deal with the weather. I mean,
It's a
the play.
dome.
I also think that players don't sign with the Browns because they don't want to play outside on the lake. That's just a
True.
fact.
True.
I mean, like you're not getting free agents because they want to play outside. That's a fact. And
Yeah.
I think they want a dome, and I think they can't figure out where to put it in the current options within the city, and so they're looking at this place outside of the city. I mean, it's very controversial. I'm not an actual like Clevelander, so I can't really speak to people's opinions about this.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's just an interesting thing to note for the future and to see where that goes. But it's going to be a ways down the road, but just something to keep an eye on.
Very interesting. I didn't know that happened. I'm looking at it right now. I'm going to raise my hand and say something that might get me ostracized by some Steeler fans. I have said this for the longest time because I was talking to someone about this back when the Bears were doing like this same thing, right?
The Arlington Heights
The
stuff,
Arlington
yeah.
Heights stuff. And the only thing holding them back right now is the mayor of Chicago. That's not always going to be the case. I think ultimately that the Bears are going to do the exact same thing that the Browns are looking at, right? Over the years, the Pittsburgh athletes all have moved north of the city to like the Cranberry area, and that's where actually the Penguins practice facility is up there. They all moved north of the city. Back in the 90s, it was actually more in the South Hills before the city was getting bigger, where I was raised, right? Now they're all north of the city. If you came and told me that it's still called Heinz Field, it's not Acrisure Stadium, but if you told me that they were going to replace Acrisure Stadium with a state-of-the-art open and closable dome up near, not necessarily near, it wouldn't be necessarily near the Pittsburgh airport because the Pittsburgh airport's actually closer, it's actually further east of the city. If you told me that they were going to put it up there with a giant metroplex and build like multiple hotels, like a little mini stadium plaza area, like bars, restaurants, and everything else around it up there where the athletes live, I'd say sign me up tomorrow. 100%. But it's going to be 15, 20 minutes outside of Pittsburgh. I don't care. The current stadium does not have to. This is where the business is headed. You mean we can finally host stuff? I don't have to be miserable going outside. It's a venue I actually look forward to getting in and out of because, quite frankly, that part of the like I know Pittsburgh, but it's not easy to get in and out of that area of Heinz of where Heinz Field is. Not to mention, I'm not a big fan of that stadium. I think it's the worst venue we have in Pittsburgh. So and so my point is that as someone who looks at the business differently than a lot of other folks, can we please let go of this whole don't like we're supposed to be a hard-nosed tough place, you're supposed to be outside and all that. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like half you people don't go when it's cold now anyway. It's just not what it used to be. Like why wouldn't you want like an incredible venue like you just saw the Super Bowl at last night and the year prior and like last couple years, right? These newer places. Why on earth would you not want the chance of they could come to our area? Oh, it's not totally in our city. I'm like, I'm sorry, but they're still in Western PA and they're still in the metropolitan area of our city. So that's good enough for me. I don't know. That's my mini rant on this. I have 100% come around on the whole. I am fine with us building like domes and stuff if it's still our team's venue. Like,
no, I absolutely. I mean,
yeah,
I'm totally there with you. I mean, I after just being to the Brown Stadium again, it's really like we got lost. Like when we went up there a couple months ago,
yeah,
like we missed an exit and it's really weird to get to. And you have to like walk a really weird way to get there. And and the traffic is a nightmare. Along with add any potential conflicts with Cavs games or Guardians games at the same time, downtown Cleveland is a nightmare.
yeah,
With the stadium there. And so if you move it outside the city, I know, look, people like friend of the show, Dylan, have their opinions, and I can't speak for that because I'm not from there
right,
to be able to have that kind of thing, like it belongs in the city kind of opinion.
sure.
But from where my perspective is, it would take me an hour and 45 minutes to get there right off the highway.
Not to
Like
mention, if there were hotels there and restaurants and stuff, you could go for a weekend and go to the game and enjoy a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
And see the game. You mean I can see the game and I don't have to go, I don't have to leave right away? Like, I don't know. I think this is a direction that the business is heading in that should be embraced because that's just the reality of it. I mean, best thing I can like you said, to add to your point, unless the city is actively contributing to the venue being greater, PNC Park, why it doesn't have to be in the city. You know what I mean?
There are 8, maybe 9 home games. You can drive 20 minutes south to the airport.
Yeah. That's the other thing too. There's not enough NFL games.
The Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse and Progressive Field make way more sense being downtown because there's 40 to, what is it, 80 home games. Like there's so many home games that it just makes sense to be downtown.
Yeah.
But when there's 8, you like, and most of the people are coming from outside of the city of Cleveland. It just makes more sense. It just makes more sense.
I'm kidding when I say this, but Steelers do this, make a new stadium, move out to your new incredible home, and then give Heinz Field to the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. There, I've spoken. There, they're still on the river, and they have a better stadium. There, then we join the MLS. I just figured out the next Pittsburgh sports.
There you go.
Then we have
There you
4
go.
major sports. I'm a genius. This is actually, I'm kidding when I say this, but now I'm like, wow, what, could this happen? Like, could this realistically? Like, no, of course it wouldn't. Make it so that the Riverhounds and Pitt football play there. And then the Steelers can finally stop sharing a stadium with that mediocre football program. Okay, I'm kidding. I'm done. Kidding. Sorry. I'm a Syracuse fan. I can say that. Anyway, I digress and I kid, but stick a pin in that because I hadn't seen that, Casen, and that is fascinating. But I don't know. I just think we just sat here for all this time and talked about how incredible that venue there is in Vegas, right? How incredible SoFi is, how incredible it's. But yeah, every city wants that.
Another thing is too. I mean, we both have been there. I love Ford Field.
Oh, Ford Field's awesome.
I love it. It is great.
Yeah. Underrated.
Build me a warehouse next to Hopkins Airport, and I will consider buying season tickets until my wife says no. But I will think about it.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. Yeah, the dog pound can just be indoors. It'll be more allowed because you won't be freezing. So I don't know. Anyway, and I also think, and this is the last little tidbit I have about it, I think we are also seeing that the whole it's an advantage we're outside and it's cold thing is getting really old. Especially
it doesn't matter,
especially when you're Buffalo and you can't even play games on the correct day because you get so much snow. Like
it's also irrelevant when half your roster's from the South. Like all of the people on your team are from the South.
I mean, it's not an advantage. Well, first of all, Buffalo for you guys, it's never been an advantage because you still can't make it to the Super Bowl. But on top of that, if you had won this year, I would maybe sing a different tune. But that aside, like it's only a shtick in places like there and like Green Bay, but you notice that's becoming fewer and fewer and far between. Like it to me, it is insane to me that a place like Buffalo that can get seemingly 10 feet of snow overnight to where their games are not even able to be played is not considering at least a partial dome. That is insane to me.
Yeah. Now, granted, in the context, the Kansas City Chiefs potentially only beat the Dolphins because of that weather disparity. So I will at least say that.
Sure.
But that is the only context in which it is relevant is when you have a team from Florida coming to a negative 30-degree temperature. Like that's about it.
You know what? It still would have been. But like at the same time,
at the same time, I don't want my players frozen either.
I don't want me. I don't want me to be frozen.
Yeah, I don't want to be frozen. Yeah,
I don't want to go and sit in the freezing cold. I'd rather sit in my like nice temperatured thing where it's.
I mean, how many games have we both seen of the Browns with a quarter full stadiums in December?
Dude, you and I both went to college at Bowling Green and saw very cold games there. Listen, college is different. I'm not talking domes for this. This is the NFL. Like. I'm paying already an obscene amount of money to go and watch my team potentially disappoint me for 3 hours. I am not I feel more about this for the NFL. With college, it's like, it's college. It's part of the atmosphere.
Yeah.
But it's pageantry and it's all that stuff. And like, that stuff isn't really an advantage anywhere because everyone in your conference, it's just as cold and or just as hot. So it's whatever. But like NFL, make my stadium nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Build a dome. Goodyear Dome. There you go.
Build a retractable roof. Yeah. So anyway, wow, that was a really heated segment. That was awesome. It's good convo, man. Another NFL season in the books. You know, any final thoughts on the whole thing? I mean, hashtag here we go, Steelers, I guess. I will say this. This is the last probably like strictly football show you'll get from us for quite a while, obviously. I'll say this. Thank you all for listening. And thank you for like rolling on along this season with us. Pun, intended for BG, I guess. It's been really fun. Like, especially Casen, I do think we should keep of the weeks going among other segments.
Yeah. Obviously with the football season over, we're definitely going to have to move into some other topics. We'll get into the winter sports as they're gearing up here for the playoff push towards the end of the season with basketball and hockey and
We got to get in the NBA. We got to get in the NHL
what comes
college.
up here in a couple weeks. Greatest month of
Right?
of the
The
year.
greatest month of the sport, the greatest month in sports, straight up. This is March. Oh, wait a minute. This is March. Is not too far off. So great stuff. And we'll be here for it. So let us know your thoughts. Let us know what you thought about the Super Bowl because, due to sponsorships, we don't have to call it the big game. It's the Super Bowl. We don't have sponsors or anything like that. So anyway, anything else, Casen?
I think that's it.
Cool. This is Kellan.
This is Casen.
And as always, we'll see you at the next stop.